What's up, nerds, and welcome back to another That Nerdy Site show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all the things nerdy we love about them. I'm your host this week, Frank Bizzani, and joining me is Jazz Foster. How are you doing, Jazz?
I'm okay, and Frank, Dad's not
What's
here
up?
for this episode.
And I know it's exciting because I was totally with you there, where I was like, it's time to just throw a party and have a rager.
I did just pop a bottle of champagne. I hope that audio caught.
I could hear it, and so I'm sure it probably like I think it'll probably come up better in your audio, and I guess we can always like fade me out too.
We can only hope. Sorry, Trevor, I'm making a mockery of your show.
I don't think it's a mockery. It's more like a party, really.
Yeah, it's
Um,
a brand. Uh,
it
yeah.
it's like the some kind of a well, yeah. I guess the only equivalent is like when the parents go away like on vacation or like on a trip or something, and it's just like okay, so we're definitely just gonna have like a house party.
Yeah. Have you done that? Did you have a party when your parents weren't home?
I didn't. My sisters, I think, did, because I think I definitely remember them having a party at some point. But then by the time like I was old enough to do that, my parents were always home and they haven't gone on vacation since I was like 7 or 10.
Sure.
And and then part of the thing too is like we would kind of get crazy at our parties. So then like I almost like never wanted to host. Like I would go to a party, but I didn't want to like host one.
That's fair.
Did you? Is that a story that you have?
We didn't have it at my house, but yeah, my friends and I had a party um, when her family was out of town. Uh, I'm sure they didn't expect it because we were usually well behaved, but it was the first time any of us had drank alcohol, and it was like very classic, like baby's first party stupidity, right? Because you don't know what alcohol is when you're that young, so we're like drinking triple sec mixed with orange soda, and we're like, yeah, drinking, right? We're like, On the flip
This is as
side,
good as it gets.
yeah, truly, we also made pina coladas with 151 rum because we didn't know the difference. And those were jet fuel, man, so it balanced out. Then we got tattoos in the morning. Hell of a party, really.
It sounds like a good time. I feel like I would definitely want to be there.
It was fun. It was fun. That was my one party. We definitely did a bunch of stupid shit, but that was the one like the parents aren't home. Let's rage or whatever.
I definitely went to one like that at my friend's house because I think his parents had went on vacation with probably some of like the other like local parents or whatever. And in that case, definitely don't remember much of it because it was one of those times where like I woke up in a pool still. Like I remember it getting to the like the wee hours of the night and just the rest of us like just kind of the core friend group were all just left in the backyard. And I think thank God we had put out the fire that was started.
Mm.
And then it was just all of us like around the pool or whatever. And I woke up just like in the pool still, and it was morning time. And I basically had that thing where you're just like, I guess you know that when you get like stuck to the couch or whatever, but it was that for like a pool chair, like one of those ones you can like lay in, and that was terrible.
Sounds fun. I'm glad you didn't drown if you passed out in the pool.
Yeah, yeah, because like I was just in that chair, just like floating around in the pool for probably hours, I guess.
Boy, we love a good blackout, you know?
Yeah, yeah, because I was definitely remember being like, oh, look, it's like I remember being like, oh, it's chill. I'm just floating around and just kind of bobbing over all the place, and then the other people were just kind of in the other chairs, but they were still on the ground like a normal person.
Mm.
Um, and I just definitely, I think they passed out over there, and I passed out where I was, and then eventually we just had to wake up and go to IHOP the next day because that was the spot in the mornings.
Yeah, classic.
Is because it was Sunday morning and there were all these people coming from church or about to go to church and getting breakfast, and then it was just our table of just people who just probably reek like alcohol and were
Yeah.
just acting a fool.
No, I'm sure, yeah.
But I see. No, those are definitely those good times that I guess you just like almost can't have anymore because of the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, yeah, it feels nostalgic just like to go out, just because you can't do it anymore. Um, it's a funny time we're living in, man.
Yeah, and so I guess that kind of goes. Before we get into our full first topic here, I'll give a quick shout out to our new Patreon member this week, The Noise. Um,
Yeah.
definitely want to give a shout out to them for being new on the Patreon, and as well, they also were on an episode of That D Plus show. I believe it was all about Hamilton again because we're still Trevor's still doing the Hamilton kind of month on that podcast. So I
Hell
believe
yeah.
that that is the episode that's going to actually go up tomorrow. If you're listening to this on Monday when it's released, if not, it'll already be out, and you can go listen to that right now. And but yeah, so okay, so then kind of bringing it back there, kind of the first topic I figured we'd talk about, since it's been a minute, I think, since we did the last podcast. Like, how have you been during this pandemic? Like, how's everything going on your side?
It's going. It's a like I said, it's a weird time we're in. I still have to go to work, um, because I had to go back to work. I was offered the job. I can't collect unemployment, so I have to work, and it's weird. Because it feels like a lot of people aren't taking this seriously. It's like a lot of people got bored with it. They were like, "Well, this isn't fun anymore," and so now they've just decided that this whole disease just doesn't exist. It won't bother them. It won't affect them. And that's crazy. That is nuts to me. So
Uh,
I still work 5 days a week, and people stroll up to have big birthday parties and brunch outings and bachelorette parties and 10 plus people trying to all sit down to drink mimosas, and it's insane. And obviously all of our staff, we wear masks all the time, we wear gloves all the time, we swap our gloves anytime we like look at something dirty, basically. And these people are just walking around, no masks. They don't care. They get mad when we ask them to wear them. Like, I feel like I'm being gaslit by like customers. It's insane. You know, I think people should care. So that's how I'm doing. I'm alive. I'm still going. I'm probably at the end of a frayed rope, but I'm still holding on.
I know, I totally feel you there because like I haven't had as much of the first-hand experience with that kind of thing, but I that's all I hear, especially where we're at here in Austin. Like, there's just so much of this thing of like, no, it's not real, or like, no, it won't catch me. But then
Oh
like
my
it just
god.
keeps getting worse and worse and worse. Like I can't, like I just want to go and do things and go to a bar or go to a show again. Like these things I used to do multiple times a week that I haven't done in months now. But it's
Mhm.
like I can't imagine doing that right now. Like I couldn't imagine going to a brunch with like 10 plus people.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's even kind of unreasonable on the other hand of like, oh, well, even if we have like less than 5 people, I'm like, we still probably shouldn't be in a large group just like out and about. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's people never cease to amaze me, I guess, in mostly negative ways. But yeah, it's a lot of entitlement and a lot of assuming that you're above getting sick, which is a weird one because you can't control that. Yeah. And people get mad about like obviously Texas closed bars again. We're back down to 50% capacity in restaurants. No bars are open, which means you can't sell alcohol from a countertop. So we keep getting customers getting really really angry with us because I work behind the bar, that we can't give them drinks while they wait because we're not allowed to legally. And people get real uppity about that. I'm like, I didn't make I don't make the rules. You can take it up with Governor Abbott. Like I got nothing on this one.
yeah, and because then there was even people that weren't following the rules, like certain bars and restaurants,
Hmm.
and then they had like the hammer come down on them. Like I heard the park up north lost their liquor license.
Yeah, yeah. So did oh shit, Buford's and Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, I think, which are both on West Sixth. They were like packed to the gills a few weeks ago, and they got shut down hard for that because obviously no social distancing in place.
Yeah, like no precautions, nothing to save people like who are coming in, let alone like the people who work for you, which is like
Mhm.
insane too.
Mhm. It's a weird position to be in where you're forcing people in the service industry to go to work because you're not providing them any benefits, and you're forcing them to effectively risk their health every single day. But we're also not really enforcing any safety precautions for them. It's a very distinct feeling of just being expendable. And I like the company I work for. I like it a lot. They take really good care of me. I was just promoted in the midst of all this, you know. But I feel like if I got sick, it would just be like, okay, on to the next one. And I think that's a prevalent feeling for anybody who's in the service industry or in your retail stuff like that. Any people that are being forced to go to work. Um, we all just feel sort of like we don't matter, which is a weird one. We're really hammering it home, you know. Poor people are expendable. So,
Uh, I totally understand the feeling. I can even like totally identify with that, and I've still been able to like kind of work from home at my job, but that's why I definitely remember the still be those days of like when I would have the kind of that same exact kind of job, and even when I worked at like Best Buy a while ago, because I was like, if I still were they the people I know who still work there now, they were all still being pulled in to be there and like work in the store, and think it took them forever to kind of come up with any kind of like precautions or help for them. And it's pretty much exactly the same kind of thing though, and that's like super unfortunate. I hope that's something that like changes.
I do too. I mean, I think it doesn't change unless it changes on a mass scale, because it's so easy to think like, well, you know, you piss someone off, they don't come to your restaurant. You piss a lot of people off, no one comes to your restaurant. Um, so I think it's a very common thing for managers to bend. And to allow people like, oh, well, they're just walking to the bathroom without their mask. Like, yeah, but that's against the rules and against the law. But we're gonna do it because we don't want to be an asshole. And like, some lady came in last week, I think. She had a doctor's note, is what she said. It was a medical exemption. She didn't have to wear a mask because she has a respiratory issue. She can't wear one. It was like a piece of paper that said this. I didn't see it because I wasn't serving her, because I would not serve her. But like, my manager was like, well, I didn't want to be rude. Like, I don't want to be an asshole about it. I'm like, but she's being an asshole. Like, I don't think refusing service is a huge stretch here. She's refusing to do this thing. We could also, it's a balancing act, and a lot of restaurants and bars are just trying to stay alive, and I get that, but it sucks to be in the bottom of that totem pole, man.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, definitely. And I think that's honestly a good point where they're just trying to obviously like keep going and keep afloat. And then it's also I guess that thing like the reputation after the fact, like once things are better, where it's like, well, we're not going to go back there, like because these people who can't even just do these simple things, or they're just being kind of ridiculous. I'm sure they would continue to like hold some kind of really stupid grudge about it. I'm
Oh,
sure.
easily. Yelp reviews out the ass and all that bullshit, and I'm sure. I wonder, like, if you do have a respiratory issue, which makes you not able to wear a mask, like, why would you go out during a pandemic that attacks the respiratory system? Maybe I'm missing something. Uh, but that got me, man. It's like, really, you have a doctor's note? Cool. Like,
And it's have you ever seen the like the Ron Swanson meme where he's like, I have a permit, and then like it's just a thing written in like crayon and basically says like fuck you.
yeah, yes. Same thing. I'm very certain of that. But hey.
Yeah, it's the same energy.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, like I'm definitely with you there, and I continue to hope that things just get better, and eventually like people will start to like follow some of these guidelines, especially because like there has even been more like actual laws, or like okay, we're gonna try to enforce like masks around Austin and stuff like that. So like I hope people will continue to get better, like and hopefully everything kind of smooths out a little bit here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but here's hoping.
Um, and so from kind of that and going into some of the other stuff that you've been up to here, so you've been playing D&D though, like during the pandemic, you said?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. We play weekly for the most part. It's a nice dose of normalcy, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, I can totally understand that. Like, and I think that's like super important now. And like, are you guys just doing it on like Discord or like Roll20 or something?
Yeah, yeah, we Zoom. We use Zoom.
And are you able to like see the actual like board and what's going on? Like, what's the setup you guys are kind of like working with?
Not as well. So I play with five other people and a DM. So there's seven of us, right? Yeah. And two of them live together. They're a couple, so they kind of do the map stuff with cues from the DM. And it's a slow process, but we make it work. And like I said, it's nice to feel like something is kind of, normal, something you can carry over from before the pandemic. It definitely makes things trickier, but it's still fun.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad to hear it because I know like I had kind of stepped away from my campaign when we had started doing this just because it was so busy, and then now that the pandemic hit, that has kind of like just kind of gone on stop for a bit. I think they're trying to get it back going. It's sort of like a virtual capacity, but I do think like I think now that that kind of thing of normalcy is super important, and especially that's like a literal kind of getaway because you're in an actual like different world doing different stuff, where like not exactly what's happening in our world is like affecting everything, unless the DM wants to try to write in a pandemic, which would be interesting.
Yeah. No pandemic for us. Nope. We're just fighting giants at the moment, so no sickness.
What what level are you guys? Did you start out at like level 1 or did you jump in at like a higher level?
So I joined the group late, and I think they were like level 10 or 11 when I joined. We're level 13 now. Um, yeah, I don't know when they started. They've been playing for a while, and I've been playing for a while, so they might have started at like 5.
No, yeah, that because I feel like it's good to jump in a little bit later, at like level 3 or level 5 or something. But I'm glad that you guys are already even far along enough where like you started at 10 and now you're at like 13, because I feel like that's when, if anything, like it really gets going in terms of like your abilities, and if they gave you some magic items or something, like I feel like that's when it gets a lot more dynamic.
Yeah, high level's the fun stuff for sure. And it's been fun. My DM's taking a lot of stuff from Critical Role. You know Matt Mercer's campaign that is a podcast and
Yeah.
it's like very popular. I think.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think that's probably like one of the most popular things out there for especially for like for D&D.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into it, which is surprising. But yeah, my DM took like Matt Mercer released a guide to his universe, to his like I don't know world, and we're using that.
That's awesome though, because I think like I think I'm not like super well versed in it, but I think he does do like a really good job for not only the things he builds, but even just like how interesting they are, like the stories he's trying to tell. So it's cool to kind of like pull from that, because like you said too, I know a ton of people who are huge fans of it.
Yeah, more. I think of the people I know that play D&D, pretty much everyone's watched Critical Role or listened to Critical Role. So they're doing a good job bringing D&D to the people.
Oh yeah, and I think it's cool that they're all like voice actors, and so I feel like that is like a really unique kind of flavor you get with it. Like there's a lot of like I don't know, like theatrics, or however you want to call it, where like there's different voices and people are really into their characters and like who they are. And that's not always something you'd like get in like normal games with normal people, because they're not just like actors like that. So that is kind of like a cool thing to see and kind of put out there.
Definitely. Are you a character voice guy? Do you give your characters voices?
Not really. I'm pretty bad at doing a lot of different voices. Like I can make my voice way deeper than it is even normally, but I feel like I can't do anything else. Like I have no range. I even found this out like a little bit ago. We played this one game where you basically build wizard spells out of like assembling different cards in your hand,
Ooh.
and the whole thing too is like, well, you got to read the whole spell name that across all the cards in like a fun wizard voice. And I was like, oh my god, like I literally can't do this. Like I tried, but I just like can't make my voice like do anything different other than just like normal dude voice.
Normal dude voice. Huh. It's-
That's the only way I could think to describe it. Like it's like because it just sounds like this, and then I can make it sound like way deeper, and I can even do the like, oh yeah, or something like that. That was kind of terrible. I'm not gonna lie, but
I mean, I
like I
like
can
it's
just
you.
make it go deeper, but that's it.
It's your voice, so I don't think it's a bad thing. I like it. It's just funny because some people are great at character voices, and some people are like it's just not their thing. Uh, no one. I'm the only one in my group that does a character voice. I'll say. Everyone else, it's such a wide range. Like some of the people I play with are just they're like, I decide to do this. I'm like no play acting at all, and I get way too into it. So there's a pretty good range.
But like I appreciate that though. Like I'm glad that like you're able to get so into it and like do the voice, because I feel like I want to, and I just like I'm like held back. And even anything, sometimes I'm just like, oh, and like because yeah, nobody in the rest of our group really does that except for our DM, who would do that with his characters. And then even when he plays in like a different group, and the guy he's playing right now is Scottish, so every time he talks, he definitely brings out like the whole Scottish accent. So
My
like he's much better at that than I am.
Yeah, my character is also Scottish. It's super funny. It's a great accent, you know. I think
No,
DMs are always good at accents. I think because you have to be. You have to make all your NPCs sound different. So that I think anybody that is a DM always has a little bit of that flavor.
no, I think that's honestly a good point too, and it definitely I feel like goes a lot into like storytelling and making people different, or even just when you hear someone, you're like, oh, it's that person, and that was even when I was when I DM'd for my first time, I only did like this kind of like one shot that I made. It was definitely like I tried, and but going back to the thing before, I'm just like I can't do this, and I just like go back to like everyone in the entire world sounds like me for some weird reason.
Sure, sure. I'd say it's not easy to do character voices for sure, and I'm not saying that I'm any good at it. I just have fun with it. Um, but there's also like there's a certain lack of like not self awareness, but like maybe lack of shame you have to do to like commit so fully to something so inherently goofy. Um, I don't think it's a bad thing if you can't do it. It's not necessarily a good thing if you can, but it is fun to see how people like play their own characters and like create that world for themselves.
Are you gonna take it like the next step further and start dressing like your character?
I've done like casual cosplays of characters. So like I played an angel character once and I wore like all white and really tall heels and like hair up really high. I do like that the Disney cosplay. I don't remember what it's called. Like people will do it when they go to Disney World or Disneyland because you can't cosplay as characters, so they do like the casual one, or they're like, I'm Peter Pan. I wore all green. Yeah.
Oh
That's
yeah.
what I do for my characters basically. I'm like, yeah, well, Liz is Scottish and very small, and so today I didn't wear heels, and that's that.
I I can appreciate that though. Like I think that definitely I think that's like still like even a good way to do it, and probably even like a better way to do it. It like just where you kind of know what's going on, or some people know what's going on, but it is just more like casual and normal.
It's fun. It's fun. I used to be in a group that went like my old D&D group was also like we were all insane for it. I mean, we would play for like 14 hours a day. Um, our sessions would be like whole affairs, but we would dress up and they'd have like big wizard hats, and we had a pirate campaign. We all dressed as pirates every time, and that was a little more intensive, I would say, than the one I'm currently playing.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially with those like super long sessions, like I can definitely appreciate like putting the work in and doing that. But I know like after a couple hours, I'm always like like I need to take a break or like stop. Like when you're just trying to do these like crazy marathon, like I don't know if I could make it the whole 14 hours. Like I can appreciate it, I just don't know if I could make
Oh, I
it.
mean, it got loopy at the end. Like it stopped being coherent. Way before that, but we were just having a good time. So I don't know that I recommend 14-hour sessions for sure. I think that's a lot.
But see, that's the important thing though too, is like as long as you and everybody else is just having a good time, that's all that really matters.
Yeah, and we were. So
Is there anything else or kind of anything lastly you wanted to share on your campaign or just D&D in general?
gosh, man, everyone should play D&D. I think it's so fun to like mess with D&D. You can really make it your own. And an example from our campaign of that is I was so proud of this stupid ass joke too. Uh, there's an item in D&D called a bag of holding, and it's basically just like a bag that is very large on the inside and regular sized on the outside. So it's like a little pouch, but it fits so much stuff. And Liz is Scottish, and I was like, well, she was a smuggler, so she needed like a secret hiding place to like smuggle things. 'Cause she was a good smuggler. Obviously, you don't be a shitty smuggler. So I gave her bagpipes of holding. Yeah.
See, I like
I was
that.
really proud of it. And you gotta blow into the bagpipes to get stuff out of it. Yeah, you can do a bunch of dumb shit like that. But I remember like telling my party about it. I didn't tell them what it was. I was just like, yeah, she always has bagpipes. And the first time she got something out of it in game, they were all just like, what the, that groan you get when you've made a terrible pun? That's basically what it was. They were all just like, what the fuck, Jess? I was like, yeah, bagpipes. So.
The the closest thing I kind of had similar to that was the first character I ever did, where I kind of fell into this thing. It started with this character, and now I've just continued it where every character I play, who that I make, like not when I'm like filling in for someone else's character, all my character names will start with an X. Um, and well, so the first time I ever made a character and what kind of started this is my character's name was Exhibit, literally just like Exhibit from like Pimp My
Yeah,
Ride,
like the rapper.
spelled
Um,
yeah, exactly. And I was a bard and I was a dragonborn. And the type of dragon I was the I forget, I think it's just fire dragon or whatever.
sure.
So I was the bard Exhibit that could spit fire, and that's why I just like basically like it took like multiple weeks into the like campaign for everything to kind of click. But I remember even I think my DM was the one that realized it like after we had already started the campaign, and it was one of those same moments where he's just like, "Oh my god!" Like,
I love the long game setup. That's incredible.
"Oh yeah, yeah, exactly." And that's why like it's just funny because like I came up with the whole theme, and it just like, oh well, look, it all works together, it all makes sense, and then it just kind of devolved into that thing when it all finally kind of like clicked. And then when we stopped doing that, we moved over to our new campaign we did for like a few years. I think it was almost like 2 years. The character I was playing was Xander, named after the great Xander Cage, Vin Diesel from Triple X.
That's brilliant. I love that.
And then he was a fighter, Eldridge Knight. So definitely still trying to be with these themes.
Hmm. Yeah.
But those are basically my two characters that I've played, and then I've created more characters for like other campaigns or done whatever, and they like always keep with the X theme. And even I created a Warforged pirate whose name was Captain Zach. And it was basically debated where it was like, all right, well, this guy's kind of crazy and he's kind of a drunk. We don't actually know if he's actually a captain or if he just wears the pirate clothes and screams about it a lot.
All the best pirates do.
Yeah, exactly. Because I definitely imagined it as kind of like a Jack Sparrow type guy, but just even maybe a little bit more insane and kind of drinking all the time. And I also thought it was funny because he's a warforged, so you're like, why is he drinking all the time? Like that shouldn't really do anything because he's basically a robot. Like,
He's just doing it for fun, you know?
yeah, yeah, like he's really committed to the bit, and that's what like I appreciate about him.
That's
But yeah, so
a very good character bit.
I say I appreciate that, especially because like I didn't get to put too much time into that, and that's one of the ones kind of going back to the earlier conversation too. I wish I could have played that way as much as I wanted to with like a weird voice and just being kind of like just kind of crazy and like wobbling all over the table like this drunk guy.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that's pretty much good for kind of D&D. We got to share some stories there and kind of see what was going on in your campaign. You also said that you've been reading some books though. Is that's what else you've been kind of filling in some time with the quarantine with?
Yeah, I've been trying. Uh, been trying to read a little bit more than I have been recently.
What have you been reading? Anything in particular?
Yeah, so I actually I bought the second book in this series. Didn't realize it was a series. And have you ever done that? You're like, this book looks so interesting, and you buy it, and it's like the seventh book. You're like, like I do that
I
constantly.
I will have to be totally honest and say that I have not because I honestly don't buy books that often, and I mean that I feel terrible just for saying that, but I'll be totally honest. But I can honestly believe that that happens because there's nothing to tell you that it's like part of a series or like even what number it is, right? Because it'll just be like its own complete name.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think it's a bad thing that you don't read. I think that we've gotten into this weird like people get into this mindset where they're like reading is smart and not reading is dumb, and like it's not. It's fine. It's just like different ways of learning and viewing the world, and like I don't know. If you don't read, that's okay. I'm a reader, so that's where it is. I don't play games much. That's we're all different. But yeah, I bought the second book in a series. It's the Tana French series. I don't know if you've heard of her. Her first novel, I guess, was a smash hit that I missed. So I've only now picked it up. And I didn't know they were a series because both of the books say that they're like, oh, inspiration for the like Dublin Murder Squad show, or say there's some TV show that is like based on these books. And so I just thought that they both inspired like movies, but they are a series of books. So I got like 100 pages in, and I was like, boy, they sure talk about these characters like I already know them. So I had to go back, and I bought the first one, and now I'm like a third of the way into that, and it is really captivating. It's very dark. It's obviously a murder mystery. The Murder Squad, I think, probably gave that away. Yeah, it's dark, but she's an incredible writer. Her descriptions are fantastic. I've never been so drawn into a book so quickly. So I'm really enjoying that.
No, I mean that's definitely really good to hear. It sounds like something that would be up your alley with them kind of like trying to solve a murder. And I guess it was obviously even good enough that it was able to inspire like a whole TV show behind it.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, she was a breakout star apparently. I just haven't read a lot of books lately, so I had no idea. But it's very good. On the flip side of that, my D&D group is trying to convince me to read the Dresden Files. The most recent Dresden Files book just came out like a week ago. I don't remember what it was called. Are you familiar with the Dresden Files?
Yeah, that I actually am super familiar with, and I wondered if that was one of the books that you had picked up because like I knew the last one had just come out like last week, I think.
Yeah, it's very recent. Have you read any of them?
I have not. I think my one friend is super into them, and he definitely told me about them, and I think he pretty much walked me through like the whole first book, maybe. Um, but I haven't picked it up. I have. It sounds awesome though. I definitely am interested. Have you picked it up and been like reading it?
Well, yeah. So here's the thing. My friends are like, you gotta read, you gotta read, you gotta catch up. My one friend like gave me his Audible login. He's like, if you listen to him, it's quicker. Blah blah all this stuff. They're so into Dresden, and I tried reading the Dresden Files like 3 years ago, and I couldn't get past book three. I didn't even finish book three because it's terrible. They're so bad, and I feel so bad. Like I love my friends, but like every time I talk about the Dresden Files, people that like the series pop out of the woodwork, and they're like, "Well, it's the first book he ever wrote, and so you really have to. Once you get to book five, that's when it gets good." And I just think that if you're gonna publish a book, maybe it should be good when you publish it. Like maybe it shouldn't take you five full-length novels to get to the point where you're like readable as an author. Like I don't think that's too much to ask, but it is. They're terrible. The main character is so sexist. It's like such a like escapist fantasy for nerds where like Dresden's in his trench coat and he's like, I'm so awkward with women, but they all want to fuck me, but it's so awkward. Like it is excruciating. And I really wanted them
So
to be good, and they're not.
you're definitely saying that Dresden's the kind of guy that would say like "milady."
Yes, yes, yes. And it would shock me if he doesn't at some point in the series. He like, ugh, ugh. It's exhausting. It is so sexist. I got through the first book and I just threw it at a wall. Genuinely, I was like, I fucking cannot believe I read that. And every like 6 months or so, I'll be like, you know what? I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to get through them. Because I own like I buy books in bulk. I don't do anything by halves. So I have like 5 or 6 of the Dresden Files because a friend recommended them, and I was like, sure, they're like $2 at half price books. I'll buy like all of them, whatever. And I just can't. I can't do it. I cannot do it. Every reread, I get maybe to book two, and I'm like, I just don't. It's not worth it. But now apparently my friends are all on me, and I'm gonna have to get through the Dresden Files. So that's what I'll be working on with copious amounts of alcohol to get through it. Hopefully.
Are you gonna? Are you? I mean, I think all that's totally fair, and especially like I've had even in like the limited amount of books that I've tried or like read, there's definitely been some that I even gave up on just because I'm like, this is just written badly.
Mm.
Um, we don't even need to dive deep into it too, but my main example of that for me is Ready Player One. Like everybody's up on Ready Player One, and I literally stopped reading it because I was like, this is written badly. Like this is just badly written.
Sure.
And so that's my hot take, which I don't even know is so hot anymore. Like I feel like that was a hot take like 5 years ago. Now I feel like everybody's kind of warmed up to that same level,
I,
but maybe that's just me.
no,
Um,
I think you're on the right track there. I don't think that's a hot take anymore. I think everyone's sort of on the same wavelength.
but I definitely remember like when it came out, it was like the shit. Like I
Yeah.
remember they even had Ernest Cline on G4, and they were like, "This is Ernest Cline. He wrote Ready Player One," and I was like, and I went and read it, and he honestly kind of comes off the same way almost. Not necessarily in Ready Player One, but I've read other things that Ernest Cline has written, and I feel like he writes that same way that what you're describing, like the Dresden Files.
Yeah, I'll say, I love Ready Player One. I wouldn't say it's like well written. I enjoyed the idea of it, but you're right. It's not like a masterpiece by any stretch. And they are. It's very similar, I would say. Maybe not quite as like jarringly sexist, but it's definitely in that zone. Interestingly, I didn't mention this about the Dresden Files, but Ernie Klein has a similar issue, I would say, in his writing. Writes the same story a lot. Dresden Files book
Oh
one and
yeah.
book two, basically the same plot, but the first one is like warlocks and the second one is werewolves. But it's like the same shit happens. Ernest Cline's the same way. Ready Player One and his other book Armada. I don't know if you've read that one. That is the same ass story. And I loved Ready Player One. I really enjoyed it for like the nostalgic romp that it was. Even if it wasn't, well written per se. And I bought Armada, and I was like, this is the same story, but with none of the like allure of drowning in nostalgia to feel better about your life. Which means it's just not that good.
I'm definitely with you there, yeah, because like I tried to read Armada too, and I kind of gave up on that.
Ugh, it's not
And
worth finishing.
I guess since it's been so long, I mean, I guess he's not even gonna do like, is he gonna do another book at some point? Like, just kind of redo the same thing again?
Yes, I'm so glad you brought this up. I was reading a few days ago that he's coming out with a book called Ready Player Two, that he's been working on for a while, I guess.
Oh God, I mean then I feel like that's almost. I guess I'm not even just trying to like shit on him, but I feel like that's even worse too, where he's like, okay, the other thing didn't work, so let's just go back to Ready Player One. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand what the sequel to that is. Like I don't really know what story we're gonna get. But according to Google, it's supposed to drop in November of this year.
are you
And
gonna check that out?
yeah, I can't. Ernie Klein is a slam poet. That's embarrassing. Google has some really interesting facts here. I am gonna check it out. I don't expect it to be good, but sometimes I read things that I know are gonna be bad just so I can feel rage. Um, you know, it's my power. But I'll read it. I don't know. I don't expect it to be good.
I think it's fair to check out though. It's like I try to give things a chance and be like open minded, even if like, and sometimes you can even enjoy things that are like bad, but they're fun, and even like you said, like I totally get the nostalgia aspect. Like I definitely a lot of the things he's referencing and talking about, I definitely love. It was just one of those standout moments for me when I was reading it, where I was like, man, this is not well written, and I feel like I don't even have really a good ground to stand on there to like it, like because I feel like I've read like books and I've read different series, but like I definitely feel like that was not something I'm like well versed enough into like critique, but I was just like, oh no.
Yeah, they're not great. We'll see how the sequel goes. Apparently, it's about the same characters. Uh, so yeah, I don't really know what the story's gonna be there if it's the same characters, but we will see.
I mean, I could definitely see this is my hot pitch for Ready Player Two. Is now it's gotten to the point where like he's old, so then he sets up his own puzzle, and then someone else has to like come in and then it's just Ready Player One again.
Oh sure, same story, so that tracks. He only knows how to write the one kind of story.
And so that's my pitch for it. And like I wonder, you got to let me know when you read it if that like
Mm.
actually tracks, like if that becomes what the book is about.
Oh yeah, I'll keep you updated for sure.
And because like you did mention too, like he does slam poetry, and that's like some of the other stuff I know him for. And like some of this one thing he has this one that's about how he's trying to like make porn for smart people, and I just like it's one of the cringiest things I've seen, and that's where I'm like, oh, it's he wrote it way before Ready Player One. I'm sure he's probably grown as a person, but it was definitely another one of those things where I was like, oh, this is just weird.
Ugh, ugh, yeah.
But so yeah, but going back over to the Dresden Files. So if you are going to go back and check it out, are you going to try Audible this time and see if that helps? Like somebody just like reading through it quickly.
I don't know. I've never tried like an audiobook. Um, I enjoy reading, and I just always, if I have the time, do that. I know people really get into Audible and like audiobooks and stuff like that, because it's something to do like while they work out or while they're driving or stuff like that. But I don't really do those things. So I feel like if I had the time, like the time I could have to listen to a book, I could also read a book in. But I might give it a shot just to try something new and see if it maybe lands a little better when I'm not reading it.
Do you feel like you get distracted? Like, if like, because I guess like if you were just listening to it and doing other things, or even if you just had it on, like, did you like? I feel like I would get distracted and miss whatever was happening.
Yeah, I'm not, focus isn't my strongest suit, I would argue. And especially like even like if I have a TV show on, I might be looking at my phone, I might be reading something, trying to write something. Like I always have a few things going on at once. So I think that I would probably miss large chunks of the novel. If I was trying to listen to it, and I wouldn't even notice. Then I try to rewind, and that'd be a whole thing. But I think anything's worth trying once, so give it a shot.
No, I'm very much with you there because I feel like I am same like always doing multiple things, and even if I was like, oh, I got like the TV on, but then I'm just like then listening to music or doing something else, or just even like playing games and listening to podcasts, and I'm always doing like three things at the same time, and that's where for some reason I feel like if I was like, oh, I'm gonna like play a game or even just do something around the house and listen to this book, I feel like I would just tune out and miss like critical things or just things you're even supposed to like pick up on.
Yeah, I agree.
And honestly, I'm with you there too. Though, like I've never tried to listen to like an audiobook, and I feel like if I feel like I get because it would be it's much faster and like easier to digest that way, or because especially like we were talking about, you can kind of do it while doing other things. You don't just have to be locked there like reading. But I feel like that's what like the whole thing I would even want out of it would be is to like sit somewhere and like hold a book open and then like read the actual like book and flip through the pages. But I guess maybe that's just because that's what I know. Like that's what I think of when I think like book.
Yeah, that's fair. I know, like, back when the world was open and not ill, one of my favorite things to do on days off would be to go to, like, a coffee shop, like Mozart's or um, Epoch, stuff like that, and just, like, sit outside and read. Um, and I think that's different than sitting outside and listening to an Audible or, like, an audiobook.
Oh,
Yeah. It's less of an experience. I'm very, like, into the experience of reading a book.
in a weird way, it's almost like I can't think of like the right way to put it, but I almost want to say like if you were just like because that's such like a like being at Mozart's and being outside like on that patio is so like scenic all the time
Hmm.
that I feel like you're totally losing that by then just putting on headphones and then just listening to somebody talk or like read a book to you. Like yeah, I feel like I feel like you lose like how like scenic and just how nice like that experience is.
Yeah, you're less plugged into like what's happening around you, which is the point of headphones, but it does detract sometimes.
Yeah, and so I mean, I'd definitely be curious if you do go in and check it out. Like maybe you get addicted to that, and that'll become like the new thing. Maybe you can listen to audiobooks and read at the same time.
Oh my god, galaxy brain.
But yeah, was that is that the only other thing you were thinking about like getting into or checking out, or was there any other books that you were curious about?
I mean that's it for now. I have shelves upon like whole bookcases full of books I haven't read. That I should get into, and I'm one of those people like I buy books all the time, and I just don't read them, and I'm just collecting things I haven't read. So there's a backlog for sure. There's a list. And there's also stuff like I wanted to reread Othello, because at some point my like overworked, exhausted brain, for no reason at all, was just like, what if Othello was set in a high school? And I've been thinking about that for like 2 weeks. So
I'd be down with that. I'd be down with that. That could be like a cool thing to bring into like the modern era.
I think it's doable. I think a modern rework of Othello would work very well. I think you could set it in a high school because there's a perfect amount of like cattiness and pettiness for absolutely no reason. And the ending I think would work. They would just go to college and yeah. I've been thinking a lot about this, so I got to reread Othello.
I mean, hey, you can always if you reread it and you still have that inspiration, you could always like write out the modern day version. We could always go try to film it somewhere.
That would be great. I've always wanted to be Iago.
I honestly like I have not read Othello, so I don't know.
He's the bad guy. He's the
Oh,
bad guy.
okay.
He was if you would humor me with some deep dive Shakespeare for a minute, because Shakespeare is my shit. Um, Othello was the original chaotic evil um, character in Iago. Uh,
Okay.
maybe not the original, but like he was certainly one of the precursors to it. So like Iago is what the Joker was, uh, because he just like the whole play is basically about him just ruining Othello's life, just like fully destroying him. And there are like side characters and stuff too, but this is focused on Iago destroying a man's life. And when he has this little monologue about why he's doing it, his whole justification is just like, meh, felt like it. Like he was like, someone said that he slept with my wife once, and he didn't, but like, whatever, that's good enough, right? I'm just gonna ruin him for no reason. Um, yeah, it's this idea of evil with no reason, um, and that spawned obviously like this idea of the villain with like no backstory and no justification. No, it's not a revenge story or a power thing. It's just like just want to set money on fire. Like
Yeah, some people just want to see the world burn.
exactly. And that was Iago was one of the original watch the world burn men. So
I can appreciate that, and I think that that would be cool. I think that'd be cool to take into like a modern context and put in like a high school, and or get like, especially because yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying, that that environment would very much have that same thing where you're like, why did you ruin this person's life? And you're like, because I felt like it, like because they were kind of like rude to me this one time, but not really. Like
yeah, yeah. There's a level of like blase nihilism that I think really works in a high school. So
it, because it sounds to me like it would be like an almost like a more hardcore or like darker version of like a Mean Girls at that point, but like in like I mean that in like a kind of like a good way, if that makes sense. Like just be kind of have like this darker, crazier version of like that same story, but like in just like a high school that's like sunny and like nice out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It would kinda.
And so that, I mean, I'd be down for that, and that's why I think that'd be a good idea. You should roll with that if you have the inspiration still.
It's on my to do list. I'm looking into it.
Well, and then I also definitely feel you with what you're saying there too, because everybody I know who like reads books always like buys a ton in bulk or just has a ton and like way more than you could ever read. But I feel like that's what like part of the fun is. I mean, I buy more games than I'm probably ever gonna play. Like I just have the collection going.
Yeah, it's a collector thing. Collection's a good word for it.
But like it doesn't it like I think it looks dope when you just have like that shelf that like even if it's just like full of books or if it's full of whatever. Like I think that's just a really awesome, if anything, like satisfying thing. Like there's just something about like collecting and whatever you're into.
Oh, I love it for sure. I mean, we have in mine and Logan's apartment, we have like four bookcases. There's like I have one just in my room. There's like three in the living room. Logan has like two shelves that I've allotted him in the corner. And I just have like bookcases of books that I haven't read, won't read, might read, but it looks homey. It looks nice. I'm proud of the collection I have, and the ones I have read, I can recommend and lend and stuff like that. So
Yeah, or you could always go crazy and just start lending out ones you haven't read and been like, it's fantastic. It's my favorite book I've ever read. Just like
yeah,
take total chances.
yeah. This one, yeah, no, it's a real twist at the ending. You should check it out. Just see what people say. There's an idea.
We should get together on at some point too and talk about because like some of the books I have read I feel like probably are definitely things you've either read or like have some kind of like of thoughts on or opinions on, because all it's mostly stuff geared towards like that young adult
Mm,
audience. I even read a lot of like my sister's books that she was into, so like I have read the first Twilight. I've also read the first Hunger Games.
sure.
And then even my big thing, that the book series that I was ever into like fully was like Harry Potter. That was definitely like my jam. That was, I feel like, the only in my entire life I feel like that's the only like book series where I was like this is fantastic. I've read like all of them.
Yeah. Harry Potter got a lot of people, man.
I mean, but I can even appreciate that, like just bringing in people who probably don't normally read, or it probably kept a lot of people probably kept going with the reading, where I just kind of fell off and was like, yeah, well, I'm gonna go watch the movies now.
Sure. I think it captivated a generation for sure. It's a rare thing to be able to do that, and I think that the series is impressive for how it got everybody into the same story. mostly. So good, good on it. The author turned out to be pretty shit, but like the series is still good.
Yeah, and that's super unfortunate, honestly. That's one of those things I like hate to hear, where because I felt like I was like I love this universe. There's like it's such so cool, and there's so many awesome like characters, and like in especially in the books, there's so many more amazing things that like you get than you get in like the movies. But like when you eventually now you go like 15 years later, and you're just like, oh, why do you have to be like that? And you're constantly just like saying these legitimately terrible things, and then I was already kind of over you before because you just keep adding all these really weird things to the universe that you don't need to say. And then you come out with like all the transphobic stuff, and I'm just like, oh my God, why?
Yeah, yeah. I've never seen someone so determined to ruin their own legacy as J.K. Rowling has really become. It's wacky, but
That's a really great way to put it, though.
yeah, it's like it's an intentional ignorance thing, which really bothers me. And she knows that what she says is gonna hurt people. She has to know that. There's no way she doesn't. And she also has to know that at the very least she could just not say it. But it's people like that who feel like they have to be right and have to be heard, and it doesn't matter who gets harmed. Yeah, she really is determined to just sort of like burn down her whole everything she's done. It's weird, man. But the series is still good for the most part. I appreciate it for the fact that because it is a series I grew up with, it's the first series that I was able to really think critically about. Because I think this is true of a lot of people. They would go back and reread Harry Potter. I know people that do it every year, because it just means so much to so many people. And I would go back and reread it, and as I got older, I saw more of the flaws in it, and that made me not like it more, but appreciate it more. Because it made me realize that I was thinking more about the books I read, and not just reading books for like the fun story. It was a cool like marker of growth for me that I still appreciate. And I can still have I have a lot of criticisms about Harry Potter. And I still think it was a great series that meant a lot to me and changed my life in a lot of ways. And also, like, it sucks. And why are all the Slytherins evil? I have so many issues with that. There's so many problems with this series, but
The houses are like super cut and dry in like in like a really weird way.
oh, it's like I'm sure Logan like is sitting somewhere thinking to himself, "I'm so glad I'm not on this podcast," because he's heard this rant of mine so many times. Uh, but yeah, it's as a Slytherin, it's bullshit.
I took the test and I got put in Gryffindor, so I was like, okay, I can live with this. I also love that color scheme. Honestly, though, they have the same color scheme that like ASU does, and I'm with that all the way.
Yeah. I was a UA girl, so bear down. But yeah, Logan is a Gryffindor too. I know most of our friends at this point. Logan is a true Gryffindor. Like he's the most like cut and dry definition of it that I've ever met. And as a true Slytherin, Logan exhausts me. But
You guys like literally have the thing going of like the odd couple.
yes, yeah, the best way I have ever described it to everybody, and I think Logan agrees with this. You'd have to ask him, I guess. I don't know. But Logan and I are Garfield and Odie. I am not Odie.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
Garfield for sure. But yeah, Logan is like self-described hope punk. He sees the best in everybody. He's so excited. He's just, hey, oh, guys, 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 and I'm like, please get the fuck away from me. He exhausts me. That makes my cat John, which I think is weird, but it rides for the narrative, I guess. My cat is the human that just like tolerates us both.
Well, yeah, because this is like the 2020 reboot. We're doing things different.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a cat named John and two roommates named Garfield and Odie who exist somewhat peacefully, technically.
And it's coming to Quibi sometime this summer.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do people pay for Quibi?
Apparently, so yeah, I have not, and no one I like really know has, but I've listened to podcasts, like, and they talk about it on the comedy button. where like they, but like it wasn't even like just making fun of it or talking about it. It was like, oh no, I've watched the shows, like blah blah blah, and I was like, so like who's actually watching it and like paying for it though?
Yeah, see, that's one of the weirdest. And before we started this podcast, before we started recording, we were talking about like the streaming services. I know you want to talk about HBO Max because you have that now. And I was saying IMDb is getting a streaming service or has one. Maybe I don't know. They will have one by like November. But it just seems like we're at an overload, and like Quibi just coming out and being like, yeah, we're not affiliated with anything at all, but we make like 15-minute long TV shows. I'm like, boy, is this where we're at? Like, is this
I,
it? Have we reached peak entertainment? Like, ugh.
I'm totally with you there because also I feel like one of the probably I don't think it was going to work anyways, but I feel like one of the biggest things that totally just cut them off at the knees was that their whole idea was like this is like on the go programming. It's a short bite size, like you ingest it while you're like in line or like like it was supposed to be only on it was only on like mobile devices and it only works in like the vertical view or at least it did when it launched. I feel like I heard they patched that at some point, but it was this whole thing of like you're supposed to be like on the go just absorbing this content and then it launched in the middle of a pandemic and I'm just like so everyone's just at home not doing anything if trying to absorb content and they come out with this like bite-sized vertical platform, so I feel like their idea totally just got killed before it ever even hit the market.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that, but that's fair. I mean, it definitely. I don't know. I don't. It's like a weird middle ground between a television show and like Vine, but it's definitely not as funny as Vine, and it's not as like engaging as a TV show. I'm confused on the market. I'm confused on the goal of this whole thing. I think Quibi was a stretch from the start, but it definitely did not help them that all of a sudden no one was actually doing anything.
Yeah, oh yeah, because like I definitely I'm totally with you there. Where like I think it was already like we're already in this super saturated market, and then this also is just like original content only, which is like I think that's a valid idea to be like, well, we're just going to make content and try to have good content and do that as a platform. But it's still like Friends in like is like the thing that still gets like the most streams and like old Seinfeld, like the stuff that's like old that everybody's already seen a million times. They just want like that comfort. Like that's the stuff that pulls in tons of views or keeps people on like these platforms. So I can't imagine that just doing only original 15-minute like bite-sized TV shows is like gonna would work, at least. But I guess we can give them props for trying something different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's kind of an original idea. It just never. I don't know. I'd love to see who greenlit this idea and have them explain to me like why.
Oh yeah, that would be the best Quibi show, really.
I would pay for it for that. Yeah, or I would free trial it. I wouldn't pay for it.
Well, because they got like $1 billion in funding to get this going, and I can appreciate like putting a bunch of money into the arts or like the artists who are trying to like create, but it's also just like we really spent $1 billion on this, like.
There were other ways. Yeah.
But that definitely, I think, is like a good segue, or kind of what you had mentioned there too, where we were talking a little bit beforehand about HBO Max, and then also the new what I suppose I'm with you. I'm suppose this is the new IMDb tribute or streaming service. Um, and so we'll start off here, I guess, with the HBO Max because like I was able to get a subscription through my friend Garrett, who also is probably listening to the podcast right now. So shout out to him. Um, I really like. I heard they were launching this, and I didn't ever think I was going to subscribe to it or like even have access. But actually going in and looking through the stuff they have, I feel like this is actually a really good streaming service, just in terms of like the catalog I was scrolling through. At least because I already have like Hulu and Netflix and Disney Plus and like so many of these streaming services that like I just don't use really. And like I even though they have some good catalogs too, this was the one we're going through it where I was like, wow, I can actually see myself like sitting down and watching a lot of these shows or even rewatching. The thing that kind of blew me away is they have the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, so I was
Hey.
sold. because that hasn't been streaming like ever. Because I feel like I remember like 10 years ago almost, like Netflix had it, and then once Netflix lost it, I don't think it's been on anything. Like I don't think you've been able to just stream The Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Not legally,
And
anyway.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's why my one friend has like all of them downloaded and a bunch of other shows downloaded that he got like through illegally. But it's just like at that at one point it's like, well, I can't easily get this legally, especially because I'm not going to just buy like the DVD box set from like a million years ago.
Yeah.
But I was excited. I was excited for that though. I already watched like one or two episodes, and that's definitely one of those things that like I would just have on in the background if anything, because that's how I did it for forever. Like I've seen all those like dozens of times, but it's just nice to just have this like nostalgic thing on in the background, like fill the void.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It's
And
a comfort thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that because that's where I feel like I liked the show, and then I've just seen it just so many times. Like it's not, I was like, it's just not even like funny anymore. It's just I know everything that's gonna happen, but I'm almost like it's just nice to have it on, or have this thing back from like when, because that was totally like one of my favorite shows like as a kid, and it's just been unavailable for a long time. It's just nice to have that like on there. And they have Friends as well, but I'm not really. I've seen all of those too, but I'm also just like not super into that. I guess like I'm not just gonna put that on in the background.
Yeah.
They also had they had a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go through like the whole catalog, but I just a couple highlights that people might care about. They have the entire catalog of Whose Line Is It Anyways, so like that's cool.
I love
Um,
that show.
that I thought that one would hit home for you, but like that I appreciate that they have like I didn't go through all of them, but it seemed like I think they have the entire series of like the old ones. Um, they also the thing that I love too is that they also have all the seasons of Curb, which makes sense because that's like an HBO show, but that's another show that like I love and I grew up watching, even though I probably shouldn't have. Uh, but it's like it's still that's still really funny to me. Like I'll still even rewatch those episodes and I know what's gonna happen, but it's still like really funny and really awkward.
Mhm.
They God, the last thing I guess that I would bring up that I don't even know if people would super care about this, but I thought it showed how deep like their whole catalog went. They have the three Lord of the Rings movies. I don't think they're the extended editions. I think they're the theatrical versions. And then they don't have the Hobbit movies. The Hobbit movie they have is like the old animated The Hobbit from like the 70s.
Oh.
Um, so I thought that was super cool in like a deep cut that I think some people would be excited about. I told my roommate and he seemed interested in going back to watch that. According to him, and I'm sure a lot of people, that's the true version of The Hobbit because that's the one that didn't get fucked up.
Yeah, I definitely someone was talking about this recently. God, maybe it was just us in the group chat, but someone definitely brought this up recently.
Because I think we talked about it. I think it might have been in the group chat and it might have been a little bit on the podcast too. Because like I was even after watching Lord of the Rings, I was even kind of like, oh, I'm kind of interested. Like I wouldn't mind watching The Hobbit, but literally every person on Earth is like, fucking don't, like
Hmm.
just don't.
Yeah. Yeah, I never knew there was an animated one. I don't know much about Lord of the Rings. Um, I haven't seen any of the movies. I'm a constant disappointment to most of my friends because I haven't seen many movies. Um, at least none of the like the big ones, so to speak. Because growing up, I just watched the movies that my dad said to watch, or that my dad put on, and my dad doesn't really subscribe to that. Like I never saw a Star Wars movie until a couple years ago, and I've only seen like one Indiana Jones. I don't know, it just never came up. But I've seen all the Mummy movies except for the Tom Cruise one because that's bullshit. It doesn't count.
You've seen the good ones.
Yeah, exactly, the ones that matter. Uh, Stuff like that. So yeah, I never encountered the Lord of the Rings movies because my dad didn't watch them, so I didn't watch them. But obviously, I know they have a great following. I didn't know there was an animated Hobbit movie, but
Yeah, because there's also like animated Lord of the Rings movies from I think that same time period. I think it's probably the same studio.
no
Those aren't.
kidding.
Yeah, and I had known about those, and when I saw The Hobbit, I was like, oh, this makes sense. I didn't know they ever did a version of it, but I guess it makes sense. And this is pretty way pre Peter Jackson, and from what I believe, I think Peter Jackson was even inspired by these because he loved Lord of the Rings, and I think he loved these animated movies too. So I think, I mean, that's definitely a certain kind of interesting deep cut.
Yeah.
I'm Go ahead.
Oh, I just that's super cool. It's interesting. Like, I don't think people often think of the Lord of the Rings movies as like the live action Lord of the Rings movies, you know? And that's totally what they are. They're like live action adaptations of these already made movies. I think, like, I'd never heard that, so I assume that people don't know that as much, but it's super cool.
Yeah, because from what I hear, like, and I guess it makes sense, like in some of the like how the movies are depend. I guess they change things or add things for that aren't in the book. But like from what I gather, he is like just like a diehard fan of the books, and then also those movies. Like, and so I think just everything all around, like he's super into, and I think that is kind of like a cool thing, and even just a cool deep cut. And I know some people even say that like the movies, those old ones might even be better than like the live action interpretations. um I'm definitely not an expert because like I've only even seen the live action ones recently. That was even something for me, is like I've seen a ton of movies, but even though I've just missed those. And it was probably even kind of like the same thing like you mentioned, because like my parents are not into anything like that whatsoever, and they like my parents have never seen Star Wars and like Lord of the Rings and like all these movies that are huge, but they like that's why I like there was always the stuff that like my dad would put on was like The Godfather, like one and two, and then like Goodfellas and like Casino, and again like all these things I should not be watching, but like some good movies in there. And then I even just went and went and sought out like new and different things, and that's how I kind of found some of this other stuff. um and because I definitely remember seeking out like Star Wars, because I think the prequel, I saw Revenge of the Sith in the theater, and then I think from there I kind of like went and like watched through a bunch of them because Spike would also do these like Star Wars weekends. So
Sure.
I think I literally watched all of them just like on TV in a row, because they're already these long ass movies, and then when you put commercials in, it takes you like half a day to watch one of these.
Yeah, true. True.
That's like definitely my memory of the my original viewings of those. And like I don't know if I've seen like all the ones that are like recent, like in the theater or like on streaming, but I don't think I've ever seen the originals without like a bunch of shitty ad breaks just thrown in.
Yeah. I've only seen like half of them. Like, I watched the first two, and then I've also seen like 4, 5, and 6, which I guess are 1, 2, and 3 or something. Don't at me in your fucking comments. I get that all the time. We'd be like, I watched the first one. And people are like, well, is it? Have you seen the fourth one or the first one? The one that came out first. Like, what an asinine conversation to have. But I've seen the prequels. No one told me. It's interesting what you don't know about movies if you haven't seen them. No one told me that Anakin was the original fuckboy. People don't talk about that. But he is.
Oh yeah, I mean like that I can definitely agree with that.
Yeah, he's awful. He's terrible. I watched him and I was just like, this guy sucks.
And I feel like I know that a lot of people probably agree with this, or depending on who you talk to, but I feel like he overall, that just kind of ruins like Darth Vader, because like Darth Vader was like kind of really cool, and then you're like, well, this is who he actually is inside the suit, and you're like, oh no, like I hate this.
I agree, yeah, and like I said, I haven't seen them all, but like I remember like Darth Vader was an imposing villain, even without knowing too much of the lore, and then having it be like this whiny kid that's like, I just want you to love me. Ugh, all right, this sucks. Like, he's way more lame now,
Oh
so that
yeah,
was
and
very disappointing.
I also can never get past the like CGI pear scene. Like it looked so bad then, and it looks worse now. And I'm like, why did you have to CGI him eating a pear? Like you couldn't buy him a pear? Like
No, it wasn't in the budget because the CGI budget was too large.
they're like, we need to use all of the CGI budget.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, yeah, and I know a lot of people had the same opinion, but it's like I feel like the heavy use of CGI is what like also super ruins those movies, where like there's whole scenes where people are talking to each other, and then the way they filmed it, they're not even in the same room. Like they just filmed like you and McGregor and someone else, like, and then they just took all the best takes of them talking and then put them together and made one conversation. I feel like that's why you get these really like awful scenes sometimes, and it's
Yeah.
just like it's super weird.
Yeah, I agree. It's an awkward. CGI has its merits, and so does like practical effects. And I think it's just knowing when to use which one. And I think Star Wars often did not know which one to use.
Yeah, and because like I mean, if you look at the like originals, like it's all practical, and except for the
Mm-hmm.
stuff they went back and like redid. But like that stuff is super cool. Like, and I think like I like practical effects, and that's also one of the cool things about like the Lord of the Rings movies is like there's a ton of CGI in there too, but they also did a ton of practical effects. And if anything, like Lord of the Rings still looks really good like today, like just by normal, the standards we have now. Like it still look for the most part, it still looks like really good. But when you look at the prequels, which came out at like the same time, it looked like okay back then, and it looks bad now, like for a
Yeah.
lot of the stuff they did.
Yeah, I agree.
And nothing can ever top the CGI that was in those original Fast and the Furious movies at that same time. That definitely holds up 1000%, and it didn't look bad back then either. I'm just gonna go ahead and die on that hill.
Love a hill to die on.
Yeah, and that I will say I am a huge Fast and the Furious fan, but I am kidding about that. That CGI looked bad back then, and it looks worse now.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, so that's just I wanted to give a shout out. Like I honestly think I haven't watched anything since I watched a couple episodes of Curb and a couple episodes of Fresh Prince, but I just wanted to shout it out because it seems like a pretty solid service. And even if the catalog's a little bit smaller right now, they're just going to keep adding stuff. I am kind of going into what we talked about or mentioned before too. Like it is so saturated now. Like I kind of miss when it used to just be Netflix and Netflix had
Mhm.
everything and you only had to pay for like one service, and now it's like, oh well, if you want the Fresh Prince, well, you got to go over here, and if you want this, you got to go over here, and if you want this other thing, get it. If you want to watch Married with Children, we'll get on Hulu.
Sure, and everything has originals now, so even if you could find everything you wanted on one site, there's still like, but Hulu's making their own thing, and you could only watch that on Hulu forever because it's their thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's another great point because I feel like Netflix for a while was really like doing great content, and I haven't kept up with a lot of the stuff they've been doing more lately, but there's still like there is good original content being made too to also kind of keep bring you in or keep you on that same subscription service. Because I also think I've been meaning to watch Palm Springs on Hulu, which I don't know if that's like a Hulu original, but I believe it's only on Hulu.
Mhm.
So I think Hulu probably paid for that in some way, but I'm like, that's just another thing though, where I'm like, well, see, if I didn't have Hulu, I wouldn't be able to watch that, and that's also how I watch Dave because Dave is an FX show, and they like if you want to watch TV, especially new TV, you got to get Hulu. So it's just like this really weird balancing act. And it's like if you want to watch anything from Disney, you got to get Disney Plus. Like if you want anything from HBO, you get on HBO. So it's just like when you have all of them, you end up with this like you end up with a cable bill again, like this like $150 like monstrous bill every
I was
month.
gonna say you gotta wonder at what point would it be worth it to just get cable again? Because I know, like, for me personally, I have like Netflix and Hulu, but I pay for an NHL subscription because I'm a big old
Hell
fucking
yeah.
dork. But I pay for the one that is like I can watch any team. Because I like hockey. I don't like just like I like my team obviously, but like I just like watching games. And that shit's expensive. So I'm like, is this just like am I just paying for cable at this point? Like, am I just paying for a sports package for cable? Should I get a cable box, or is this still cheaper than the alternative? And I still don't know. I think it's still cheaper, but it's really hard to tell.
I think depending on how many services you have, it technically could be, but it is like it's hard to tell, especially if you just keep like adding more on top of it. And like the with the sports thing, it definitely gets hard, especially because then like and it, like all the sports subscriptions are like super expensive, and if you wanted to get more than one, then at that point, yeah, like you might as well just have like cable and get all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know the like the MLB service is like 150 a year, something like that.
NHL is the same if you want all the teams. I think if you're just paying for your own team's games, it's only like 80 maybe. 80 or 90. It's much cheaper. And like I said, I pay for all the teams because I would watch any hockey game. I just like hockey. Um, But yeah, I mean, the sports ones are expensive. At some point, it's easier to just find a bar that you know has it and watch the games there, because that ultimately, like, paying for drinks is cheaper than paying for the service.
Yeah, and you're getting more out of it
Yeah.
really. And if honestly, like that's my favorite place to watch sports at this point because like Like I remember like watching football sometimes at home, and it was like fun, but it's so exciting to just be in a bar of people when like most of the people are engaged or like watching it. And, like that's a fun place to see like the Super Bowl or like whenever the college is playing here and they're doing like the finals, like that's always like go to any bar and it's like packed out with people screaming.
Mhm.
And I guess like it's a good point where you're saying there too, where at this point it's like a good way to just like probably the cheapest way to absorb that kind of content.
Yeah. I mean, if only bars were open, right? Or sports were on. Honestly, it's all shut down. Although sports are coming back soon, aren't they? Like a week.
Are they? Because like I didn't know if everything was still basically like canceled out.
I know hockey's coming back. They're trying to finish out last season and do the playoff run and then start next season all within like 2 months, which is crazy. Um and they start up again in like a couple weeks maybe. They're in training camps right now. I think MLB starts back up again soon too, for like a shortened season. I don't know.
And I mean, they're just trying to make up for lost time, I
Oh, I'm
guess.
sure. And like the Premier League started back up, although Europe has done a markedly better job of maintain or containing the pandemic than we have. Pretty much everywhere has. So it's not necessarily surprising that their sports came back before ours and seem to be doing better than ours almost certainly will.
Oh yeah, I definitely believe that. Like, or I mean, I guess I don't even have to believe it. It's what's happening. But because I saw I forget it was somewhere over in I believe it was like in Asia somewhere. But like their baseball is already back up and running, and like the people you can go and watch it, and like there's like people in the stands, and like I was like, oh wow, crazy! Like look at what happens when you try to follow
Yeah, how
rules.
about that? Good on them though. I mean, keeping people safe so that people can enjoy their lives. A novel concept.
Oh,
Hmm?
oh yeah, and the kind of going off a little bit of like the cable thing too. That was the last thing I forgot to mention about like what I kind of want to see from any streaming service, but especially in this case, like HBO Max is just like that shuffle button where you could just hit like random or shuffle or even like make a playlist and then hit shuffle. And because like it's that thing of like, yeah, I want to rewatch some of these things I've already seen, but I don't want to just sit there and pick like, oh, I want to see this episode. I miss that's one of the things I miss about cable, where it's just like, no, this is the episode. Like it's not something you have to think about. It's just on, and I
Yeah.
can just and it's just like if it's just like something that's on and I can just be like, oh yeah, like this, just kind of catch it and just kind of see like, oh yeah, like this is the random thing I want to watch right now. And that's just one of the things I continually miss about like the cable, and that you don't get with like all these streaming services. Like you have to think and pick whatever you're gonna like go after now.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I know we've gone over an hour here. Did you want to try to do the last topic, or did you want to just try to wrap it up with that?
I think we can save the last topic. It's an interesting discussion no matter when we have it, so.
I agree. I think that's honestly something fun, and I think that might even be a good one to have on like a larger episode too. We could have like cross discussion
Yeah.
about who people might be, and so that's a tease for a future episode that you may get here one day.
Hmm.
Well, yeah. So I definitely appreciate you joining me for this episode, Jazz.
Yeah. Thanks for talking with me while Dad's gone.
Oh, definitely. Like I hope I had a good time. I hope you had a good time. Um, everybody can follow you at jazz_foster, and everybody can follow myself at irrelevant jokes. You can also follow all of us at that nerdy site and check out thatnerdysite.com for our latest content. If you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, and subscribe, and maybe even consider supporting us on patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Every patron gets an early access to a monthly bonus episode of this show. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys stay nerdy and be good to each other.